Okay, we are live, right? Dave, excited to be on here with you today, man. It's hard to believe that we are already at the tail end of 2025. We've got 2026 right on the horizon. We've accomplished a lot this year. The industry's gone through a lot this year, and I'm excited to hash it out with you a little bit today.
It actually kind of feels like 2026 since we've been talking so much about the future. And, I know we get to celebrate some of the things that we have learned this year, but the amount of things that we're learning right now, I couldn't be more excited for what's coming ahead in the 2026 direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And for all of you joining us today, hopefully we've got quite a few of you who have registered, who have expressed some interest in just hearing, kind of what we were going to close up the year with. And it's certainly been an exciting one. It's not just going to be Dave and I today. We're going to bring in both Matt Triana, Chief Client Officer, as well as Mike Bukowski, our VP of Product Development. And they've got some awesome stuff to share today, too. I think what I'm most excited about is that at a time where industry is honestly pretty challenging and we all have 50,000 things to do, we've got a lot of people on with us today who are willing to take 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, depending on questions out of their day to learn a little bit more about what we have going on, what we see as reflections, and then what direction are we headed in 2026. As we get into this today, everyone, as we really get through this presentation, I'll certainly stop every couple of slides and make sure if there is any questions, anything that we need to call out, feel free to just drop it right in here. I'm fortunate to not be the smartest one on this call today and really proud that I'm not. So I'll most likely be deferring that to some of the experts that we will have on with us throughout the presentation, but we'll move effectively through this, get everybody back into the dealerships and back into their day. So what are we going to be talking about? Today's agenda, pretty straightforward. We're going to talk a little bit about just the year of change. That's the way that we've been looking at 2025. Where we began the year, a lot of you know the reunion runs off the EOS model. So we set 10-year goals and then 3-year goals and then 1-year goals. And then we set quarterly goals to get to our 1-year goals and then so on and so forth from there. When we started the year, we had no idea the challenges, the things that we would come into, as well as the opportunity, things with market data and GEO. We're going to talk a little bit about some of those product enhancements and where we are, because we know it's been a lot on you guys, our clients as well. But then we're going to talk through just some of what's going on with Google. What's happening both just in search volume and where does AI come into play? We're going to obviously talk a lot about that with everything that we have. For some of you who have not seen our GEO piece, Matt's going to touch a lot on that. But really, what should we be looking for? Why is it still an investment in the future? Then we'll go into market data and insights. I'm going to hand it over to Dave, who really is, as we get into the end of the year here, right? Every deal starts to really count. We're going to really look at just market data through a different lens. Dave's background coming from Leith, VP of Marketing there. How would we use this data to attack market share today? And then finally, we're going to close out with some product roadmap preview. And this is, I hope, inspires some conversation with the client success team, the people you guys talk to on a regular basis. Because for us, we're going to throw some things out there. We would love any feedback on what you guys have to say. So what's happening now? Like I said, this has been a year of honestly unprecedented progress. We've really prided ourselves a lot at Reunion on just our kind of culture of innovation, but this year was on full display. So for those of you who have been along with us all year, have seen some of these changes, I just want to say thank you first and foremost, because I'll be honest, even for our team, it has been a lot to see these different evolutions. But let's talk about what we have done. All the way back to May, we really rebranded our platform, as it was called, as the dashboard, as it was called. And it led us to, really the branding of altitude, taking search beyond limits. And with that came the idea of market data. We realized that I often think back to my first time presenting market data, where I had a general manager from the Carter Myers group, and he said, no longer do I have to stop pretending to care about your metrics. You got to now focus on mine. And it brought a level of sales and market share and inventory data into our platform really to enrich our conversations, right? And I think that was what we believe was going to be one of our, I'd say, cornerstones of the year, right? Would you agree with that, Dave? That Really, we thought that was the pinnacle of the year. Is that right?
And it really was at the time. And then, now with all the generative engine optimization questions, it is still just as exciting and still just as big of an opportunity to take market share from others. But now coupling that with all the AI search trends and how quickly consumers are behavior is changing, I think there's just that much more to be exciting about.
Absolutely. So we finished that market data off, revamped Adapt, which led to a lot of you folks on the call today actually adding on our paid search service, which is something that's really exciting. And then we get to exactly what Dave's talking about, that key lift AI overviews. It was about March of this year where we started to say, you know what? Not everyone is Googling. Not everyone is using it. Even internally, I think Dave at this point is using ChatGPT 90% of the time. Is that fair to say?
At least,
At least
I think maybe even higher now. I'm using it that often.
Maybe even higher. And so how does that impact our services, how we communicate, how we talk to our clients, and then ultimately, how are our customers finding us? That's one of the things we're going to talk a little bit about. But making sure we're at the forefront of those AI overview detections, and then how much of that traffic were we inevitably getting from these different LLMs as we define them today. And then ultimately leading us to Endeavor, which again, I'm excited for Matt to talk through it, his detail today, one of the real brains of it too. So we're excited at the roadmap. And again, thank you all for learning with us this year, learning how to adapt to these things, learning how to really go in and make sure that we were making sure that we stayed one step ahead as the industry threw challenge after challenge at us. But we're not the only ones up against this, right? Search is just changing faster than ever. And Dave and I have been fortunate to give this a part of this presentation a few times now, because there's a lot of questions out there about how are people interacting with search and where is Google's falling within this. We're going to aim to answer some of those today. But we all know that Google is always going to change. The search is always going to change. If there's one thing that's consistent, it is the idea of change. Remember those yellow boxes that used to be around the Google ads, right? Then VLAs came out, and then we used to have 1 GBP. It used to be called GMB, if I even remember correctly. Now we can have up to 5. Things have always changed. But one thing that's always remained consistent is it's our job to help our dealerships not only own these first and second places where those low funnel transactional type searches are coming from. Matt's going to talk to that later, but also dominate that Google business profile and having those robust ones. Why has that always been important? Because that's where a lot of those low funnel clicks come from, right? But additionally, now that is allowing us the most amount of opportunities to show up in that idea of position zero, where people are getting answers right within the Google SERP without actually having to click all the way through to the site. When you combine that with the fact of if the trends continue like they are today, there's going to be a whole host of people like Dave in this instance, likely, that might not even touch Google until the very end, or maybe not even all along their buying journey. At the rate that we're increasing our referrals today from these LLMs, and we like to largely look at Google's Gemini, ChatGPT, and Perplexity. And again, we'll go into more detail as to why of that later. But how do we make sure that we're building a strategy to protect the now and while investing in the future? Some other trends and just stats. I think that all of us are coming into a lot of year-end planning. And so we pulled some of these, what we feel are the most relevant as well as the most up-to-date statistics that we've been able to pull specifically for this webinar today. So AI overviews, we're going to talk a little bit about them. I mean, it seemed to be everywhere. I actually think they were even higher than 26%. I think for a lot of the 26% is for the commercial, but then even as high as 40% of searches, we're seeing them at some point. Now that's actually declining. And it's something we've all even been seeing in our own searching over time. And why do I think that is? Well, I think we're coming up on this big holiday, not Thanksgiving, Black Friday, where Google believes the shopping is there. And that I think will yield to some of the conversations we'll have later about Google's position in the market today. They want us clicking through. They want us clicking on shopping ads to protect their overall investment. But of that AI traffic that seems a little bit smaller today, while it's still steadily building, right? It seems to be converting. People are educated. People understand what they want. People know what they're looking for. And I think that that's because a lot of the searches that are happening on ChatGPT and these other LLMs, so much of it is about driving information, right? So much of it is about understanding the path to purchase, understanding options. And that's why there's such a huge increase here. And for me, I believe that the people who are using this, I've often equated that we are on the precipice of this really growing. And I really do believe that the people who have adopted this, who are at the forefront of AI searches and implementing into your dealerships, you are at the beginning of the bell curve. And so how do we, alongside each other, continue to drive this home, understanding where we are today while looking to the future? Because Google's not going anywhere anytime soon either, right? We just talked about how much AI is growing and how much things are changing. But I also believe that Google is quietly as big as it's ever been before. This year, we will process 5 trillion searches on Google. Now, maybe we're just not as smart as we used to be, or maybe it's because we can just get information at our fingertips. I always joke that at our dinner table, there used to be questions that were asked, and we were like, man, I don't know the answer to that. So we just moved on about the conversation. That's over, right? We can always find that answer. We can always find out exactly what's working and where we want to go to help us take the conversation further. And when it comes to that low funnel, Google still dominates that search. About 95% of traffic still relying from those original queries. And so let's circle back as we set the stage here to those AI overviews I just considered as well, because they take up a lot of the screen. I mean, when they're present and when we're actually on top of it, when we show ourselves, and that's, again, a metric we've been tracking, I believe, since June is when we rolled out that. So I'll have to fact check myself later on that. But there's a lot of these AI overviews happening, guys. And I think it's really important for us to see, that we know that it takes up a large part of the screen. And of those, I mean, a lot of it is on mobile. And how is that affecting our strategy? And how is that not just affecting SEO, but our search, right? How do these things come into play? Dave will address that too. And then finally, when we get to those, when those AI overviews are present, how are we building content that helps the AI overviews answer the questions favorably for us? How are we shaping that narrative? How are we making sure that if somebody's not going to click through, that they're getting the best representation of us? And finally, before my last piece, before I hand it over to Matt here, is that we have to be tracking this stuff, right? The time is now to get a foothold on what are people looking for and how do we show up today. I like to look at GEO as really the intersection of SEO and online reputation management. But with that, let's start tracking it today. Let's be on the same page for what we want to be appearing for and why, and then build a strategy to match that as we go forward from there. Dave, anything you'd like to add there before I pull Matt back onto the screen here to talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, I mean, a couple big things, right? So, I mean, for a long time, a lot of the focus was on the ads, right? So just keep in mind that all of a sudden, all this SEO work we've done for years and years and years, I mean, puts us that much more visible in these AI overviews. And so the real estate is being taken up by all the effort. And Matt will dig into some of the deeper examples of how that's working and why, and some of the differences between SEO content and geo content to show up there. But the real estate is so big. And then, in this world where everyone keeps saying SEO is dead, and every 2 months we see someone, with a clickbait article, SEO is dead, it's dying. When you see 5 trillion searches and you see that line just go straight up, remember, Google's got 95% of search, as Chad said. And what they're doing right now by leveraging AI and answering questions faster is getting people to that revenue click faster. So again, Google they're not shrinking, right? I mean, they have obviously some fierce competition that for the first time in a long time is at their heels, but they're trying to get that revenue. They're trying to get people to move more quickly through to the shopping experience, get them to click on that button that gets them money and gets them revenue. And so one of the things we probably want to think about is how many questions does it take to be answered so quickly before they get to that shopping behavior? And if we're influencing them throughout that entire journey, answering those questions, how much more trust can we establish when they're in that shopping environment? So keep those things top of mind as we dig into these next few slides.
Absolutely. That's a great way to sum it up. And so with that said, we'll bring Matt in here now, who's really been the leading architect of a lot of what we've got going on the GEO side. So hopefully he'll appear here momentarily. There he is. We had to bring him from the backstage up to the front. Matt, welcome. Thanks for joining us today. And man, tell us a little bit. Well, I guess actually I have one more slide before I transition over to you. So with everything we just said there, right? we're going to continue to dominate the SEO side. That is still should be a focus because of that 95% Dave just talked about. You're going to spend some time talking about GEO and why that's important, and how our strategy maybe even is changing or shifting from what we continue to learn. And then Dave's going to come back in and talk a little bit about search for us to make sure that we add, and what I describe as owning the 3 phases of the customer journey from there. So now, Matt, tell us how these 2 things start to tie together with GEO, SEO, and we'll continue from there.
Cool. Thank you, guys. Yeah, so I think first off, we look at this, you talk about the core LLMs or generative engines, and you just look at the market share. So we've obviously talked about the whole, like how many Google searches there are. But when you start looking at like ChatGPT compared to Gemini, Perplexity, ChatGPT is taking up 61% of the US market share. So they're the top one we need to stay on top of. But then when we actually look at like, how do they determine what their responses are going to be, or like what is the things that make up whether you're visible in a prompt or not, you see SEO is the #1 ranking factor. And so we talk a lot here is like, you have to have really good SEO. Like that is the most important thing. But what you can't forget is that online reputation, like Chad mentioned, but also awards, accreditations, affiliations you have. You see on Gemini, like local business reviews, GBP is huge there. And so really what this is doing is it's forcing us to say, you can't just do SEO, or you can't just not do SEO and just do GEO. You do have to look at these as holistically. And one other thing too, with when we're thinking about this is, your reputation could impact what it's going to say. And I'm going to talk more about that when we're actually getting into the prompts, the visibility and reputation.
Absolutely.
And so we see the differences. We know who's using what, but if you actually really start digging in, we think ChatGPT, they do a really good job. If you prompt ChatGPT, the answer it reads very well, but it doesn't have a ton of citations. And so we actually know this because we track prompts across ChatGPT, Gemini, and Perplexity. And what you notice is a ChatGPT response may only have 1 citation for your business, whereas Gemini or Perplexity, they could have 15 to 20 for the same prompt. And so really when I'm looking at like a Gemini response, what we're noticing is the length is longer, but they do a phenomenal job of bringing in your GBP, bringing in what Google does well. So like think about those local listings, the images from your GBP come in, rich results. So Gemini does a very good job there. I'm guessing not many people here use Claude or Grok as much, just knowing the percent, but like Claude is used for big businesses. If you think about Claude, a lot of big businesses love how it can ingest massive amounts of data. That's where we're seeing that used a lot. And then with Grok, it gets its light because of Twitter or X. But Grok, if there's one thing that it does do pretty well is it can take the updated news stories directly from X and it'll push it into its responses.
Yeah, I think I actually love being able to break this down. So I'm glad you did today, because one of the things that I always think about is like, I still use Google, and I still use it because I am often in new places traveling for work, and I'm like trying to find the closest restaurant near me. And I still believe that Google owns a lot of that like location based stuff. But then when I find myself, we're giving a webinar or doing something like that, I'm trying to do my own research. I find Perplexity to be awesome. Mm-hmm. And then ChatGPT, now it just has a place on my phone always. And I just believe that, and maybe you would agree, that this idea of like a fragmented search environment, would you say that that's kind of where we're headed? Is that, certain people will use certain tools for certain reasons, or how do you see that coming?
Yeah, no, I would agree with that 100%. I think we're going to talk about the different stages that customers go through as they're searching. And we talk like that informational research stage. Perplexity could be the best place to start. Mm-hmm. And they probably are going to find 1 or 2, or they probably have really 1 where they're doing that more research heavy. And then ultimately they're going to use the one that gives the best local results as they're further down the funnel. I've personally had examples where ChatGPT will just leave off local businesses but it's not using the GBP listings, and that's why. And we know a lot of our customers or non-customers that just in other industries, they don't keep up with that. So if you don't keep up with it, the likelihood of it being accurate on one of these LLMs is even lower.
Absolutely. It all ties together, right? And later we'll bring Mike up, who's part of that, like less than 1% Hughes Grok. So it's always fun to pick on those people too. So tell us a little bit, Matt, about what we are seeing now. And some of this will be repeat for some of our customers, but put your own spin on it, because a lot of these folks have heard me talk about it, but maybe not you, who has actually been, on the ground level building this from day one.
Yeah, I'm going to go deep onto each of these elements, but this is meant to just say, hey, with GEO or generative engine optimization, there's a reporting aspect to it. You versus your competitors. There's a curve around what does it mean though, and what are we reporting? So we're going to be talking about prompt visibility. So first off, what is a prompt? What does it mean if you're visible in the prompt? And then we're going to talk about that intersection with ORM. Like, why do citations matter? What is a citation? How is that different than a normal Google search result? And then the last we'll hit on is the content. What's different between maybe just a shopping behavior page, model landing page on your website versus a long form blog written for Endeavor?
Absolutely.
So prompt visibility. And so first, the way we've built this out and how Reunion is handling this is we've got a standard set of prompts, and the prompt is what is being put into the LLM. We're not talking Google here. This isn't Google search like we talk keywords, keyword position. So there's a standard set of prompts. You're visible if your business name is referenced in the prompt. So if we ask a prompt, who's the best car dealership in XYZ area, and your business is referenced, we would say, do you have prompt visibility? You're showing up, you're being mentioned. But that's only one side of it. You can be mentioned, but it's not good. So we'll go to the next slide and we'll talk through. Maybe.
There we go.
The sentiment of that prompt. So you got to think about it this way. We're referenced, that's good, but it might also be bad, because what if we're referenced in its negative context? Mm-hmm. What if we're referenced and it's saying, don't go here because of XYZ? And so what we've built with this brand sentiment analysis is not only can you guys visualize what the prompt said, what the sentiment is, but we also built the ability to look at the top commonly cited automotive sources for you versus your 10 competitors. And it's really small here, but you'll see like Dealer Rater, Yelp. We pull in the Better Business Bureau, and it's showing what is your review count, what is your review score, and then also, this is probably really helpful for a lot of our clients, is when was the last time did you actually get a review on that platform? So when you know this, we can better have strategies to target with our ORM company, where do we need to divert reviews? Because maybe we're falling behind. So we're going to go from you're visible, is the sentiment positive, negative, which then goes to the citations. And Chad, we'll go to the next one, which is the link or the citation in that prompt where they're getting their information and they're referencing, is it your website? So an example I'll use is you can be mentioned, you can have prompt visibility, you can have a positive citation, they can talk positively about you, but have a positive sentiment, but the citation, you don't have one. And the citation could be coming from cars.com's business profile for your store. Why that is, we would say, an opportunity or a risk is you are relying, or the LLMs are choosing another website to talk about you, and maybe pulling in what amenities that are checked on your cars.com page that you probably haven't updated in 5 to 10 years. So we say, let's control that narrative. The citation we want the citation to be from our website. And so we'll talk on, like, you'll hear us talk about strategies about an optimized About Us page or a reviews page. Like, the goal is getting more citations. So we are controlling the narrative. We're telling why we're a great dealership, why we have good amenities, what makes us stand out. We're not relying on the Better Business Bureau reviews or, Auto Trader's business profile page talking about our store.
Yeah, I think, Matt, that's phenomenal. I mean, I love just breaking it down into kind of those 3 distinct sections, right? And for me, every time I do this, I always think like just how different it is than just our standard SEO, which is obviously for us, right? And like there's been debate about how it fits in, but when you consider like how different the strategy is, the factors that you have to consider, it's totally different. I want to back it up just a little bit. When you start talking about the prompts, because I know like we don't necessarily, if I'm not mistaken, ChatGPT doesn't tell us, like there's no Google search console for ChatGPT, right? So could you elaborate a little bit on just the methodology for coming up with the prompts that we have chosen for right now?
Yeah. So if anyone says they have the right prompt list, that you can't believe them, because like Chad said, there is no data. They don't give that back to us. It's not like Google, where we have Google Search Console and we can get all the query data from all of our clients. And so actually that's how we came up with the initial prompt list. So we know there's 5 trillion searches on Google this year. So what we do is we go through our clients' Google Search Console and we look at the long tail intent keywords. How are people searching there? Then we took that, our standardized list, used AI and turned those into a various sets of prompts. And so I went through a process where I'd take one query and I would kick out 6 to 10 different prompts. So AI is helping create like, hey, this query could be these types of prompts. We then started, this is earlier in the summer, start testing these prompts. And so you throw in each variation and we see the responses we're looking, and we're seeing what kind of responses we're getting. And we were able to hone these in to our iteration that we're at now, where it's it started with Google, morphed through using AI, us doing research, seeing the types of responses we were getting, iterating that prompt to ultimately getting to the list that we've standardized today.
That's awesome. And about how many prompts is that total? And then we'll keep moving because for time's sake, but about how many prompts are we tracking and how often does that pull in for us today?
Yeah. So you got to think, we track prompts across 3 different LLMs, and it's hard to see here, but you've got ChatGPT, Perplexity, Google AI mode. Then we're doing it across the 5 locations. So you got the 3 times 5, the 15 times, plus about 50, 60 per. So hundreds, I think close to 1,000, depending on the client.
Wow, that's awesome. A lot of data coming in every day.
Yes.
And then that's pulled daily, right? Because everything's a little different.
Correct. It's pulled daily. And the thing here is the standardization is what makes it very, very important for us, because when we standardize hundreds of prompts across hundreds of clients, we're looking for trends and we're looking to see what's changing and how to address it. And so this is going to be an ongoing thing that we're going to be adjusting as we get more data.
Absolutely. And so something that we've certainly adjusted over the years that you and I have been working together is the anatomy and how these strategic content pages actually look. So tell us the difference between my regular old SEO page, and then we'll talk a little bit about GEO in a moment.
Yeah. So when you're thinking just optimizing for SEO, then say there's a specific keyword, a query we want to win. You build a page that can be targeted to that. To win that, the page can be like we have example here, like a model conversion page. You have a little bit of content. You don't necessarily need a ton of content. The inventory is present. It's marked up with all the technical elements that we want. They're also focused around that query. So what you see is a page that's very like conversion heavy. It still has all the technical SEO elements you'd want, but we're targeting a specific keyword with a query, and we know who our competition is, and we're going after that in Google search.
Right.
Whereas in the LLMs, we'll go to the next one, say we'll call it like a long form topical authority blog. So a blog like this could be, we call it expanded word count. So what does that mean? It could be 600 to 3,000 words. We have FAQs on these. You'll notice the H2 on this example has a question. All H2s are asking a question and then we're answering it. They're written with a conversational tone. They have schema markup. So things we know, not only just search engines like, but the LLMs are looking for and like. They all have a specific layout that we're going through. Easy to read. Internal linking. Internal linking is great for SEO, but also for the LLMs. We're internally linking the blogs to other blogs, but then also back to your website, propping up your other standard SEO content. So these, I'd say the biggest thing, if you just look at them, you notice a difference, but they just have a lot more elements on them because they're really broad. They're reaching more. We're trying to hit way more than just one specific keyword, one query.
It makes a ton of sense. And for me, one of the things that I just find so interesting here, right, is I like look at it like built for consumption, built for people, built for the machines, right? Like making sure that we're feeding the machines as much information as we possibly can, because let's face it, some of those people aren't going to click through. They're not going to come shop our inventory the way that we're used to it, right? And that's why like you have to be building these content pages. It's like the links together, right? The bones of good SEO strategy are the bones of a good GEO strategy, but just how people use these tools are completely different. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And this slide's a good transition. That this leans into the like, I'd say, what is different about where people are in each stage. And so when we say informational, we kind of hit on this earlier with AI overviews, how they were showing up a lot. They do show up a lot for informational queries. So when you're thinking about like the what, the why, the how, they will from time to time show up for a transactional, but it's very few and far between. So when we think of an AI overview firing, you're higher up in the funnel, most likely. These commercial and transactional, like this is when we're starting to go down further down the funnel. Think of like you see for sale, near me, buy, or maybe they know what they want in the commercial. They want to compare two vehicles. They've gotten a little further down. And then your navigational user, this is someone who's literally just going, I know where I'm typing in my website URL. They hit enter. They just go. Obviously, they're coming to the store. They know what they want. They're as far down the funnel. They've picked their dealership they want to work with.
That's awesome, man. Matt, I think it's so helpful for people just to hear from you and hear the strategy come together from that. So if anybody's on and they want to ask Matt a specific question, feel free to drop it back in these comments. I've tried to answer a few as they've come up. Matt, thanks so much. Don't go far because we're going to bring you back on at the end here.
Awesome. Thanks.
So as we bring Dave back onto the screen here, guys, I believe in our overall methodology here at Reunion is to own as much of the real estate as possible through the SEO and GEO efforts, right? Build that, own our backyard before we go into others. But as we welcome Dave back, what he's really going to talk about is how do we now tie in this market data, the data that, the OEM gives us, but never makes it all the way through, right, into our marketing efforts. Dave, I'm excited to hear a little bit, and I think you've got some things to talk through on just how do we now that we've built this foundation with SEO and GEO, how do we pinpoint and get laser sharp here at the end of 2025 to make the most amount of deals possible happen in November and December?
Love it. Well, you know how excited I am to talk about this. People ask, what keeps you up at night? And right now for me, it is this. It is how can we leverage a visualization and understanding of a market to move more metal, give our partners more opportunities, more at-bats to go out there and sell more cars. And, Chad, we've been working together a long time. We worked at Leaf together, right? I mean, we would have loved to have had something like this. And so we appreciate our relationship with Urban Science and our ability to pull in sales data across a market and couple that with Google data to pinpoint, where's the competition at, where are the sales at, and then really, I kind of look at this approach as like either a game of chess or, for me, I love a game of Risk, and let's make sure that we're doing a few things that we're focusing on our backyard. Are we selling cars within our AOR? So this is a map of one of our partners, and what you'll see, it's a little hard to see in there, but what you'll see is, a shaded orange area. That's their AOR. And then every single dot represents a zip code, which we can look at it either by zip code or by city, and if it's green, that means greater than 50% market share. If it's yellow, 25 to 50. If it's red, 25% and under. And so, what we want is to have greens in our backyard. We want to own our AOR. We want to make sure that, we are protecting our house. We're protecting all the opportunities that are nearby from going to competitors. And then beyond that, what people, and we've identified a lot of this as we've been digging into the data, a lot of folks want to just go right after their competitors' backyards, right? And conquest right there. But what really, where the real opportunity lies, and we keep learning more and more and more about how to approach this, is start identifying where the battlegrounds are. Mm-hmm. So look at where we are in the blue dot, and then look at, the little red pins, those are competitors. where can we go and start stealing market share, from each of our different competitors and start prioritizing our content, and prioritizing our paid search spend, sharing with some of our other partners for things that we don't maybe do, things, if you've got direct mail campaigns going, if you've got, an OTT partner who's doing stuff that can be leveraging the same data in a cohesive manner that we are targeting and going after the areas where we can start selling more cars, increasing our share of the overall market. And one of the ways to do that, you can see on the side, gain a further understanding of the market. How does your inventory count compare with the competitors? How many vehicles do we have versus others? How are they priced? Are they going for heavy turn? Are they trying to hold gross? Because that gives us an idea into the market, and even on a per model basis. So a lot of this, right in that market data, piece of altitude, that helps us identify where the battlegrounds we want to go after. So protect the backyard, go after the battlegrounds. And, one of the neat things, I know, Chad, you and I have had a lot of conversations recently, is a lot of folks have been doing this manually. So we didn't even realize how much of a time saver this was for a lot of dealerships who do this, which has been a nice byproduct for us. But it allows us that much greater insight. And I'm happy to hop in and maybe go to the next slide here as we look to share just a couple of live examples of how this is working. So, Emily, I'm going to do my best here. We practiced how to go do this here. StreamYard is a newer one for me to actually have any level of being in charge of here, but I think I've got my screen share. Can you see my screen?
Not yet, but here it comes. Boom.
All right.
You might have to zoom in a little bit, Dave. It's a little small for me in the audience here.
All right. So let's see what we can do here by zooming in. Okay.
Perfect.
How's that look?
Much better.
All right. So what we are looking at here is kind of a live look into one of the markets that we're looking at. This is a good client of ours. And then I just picked a couple recently that I've been looking at. Again, I've been staying up late night. We've been working with, some attribution partners, our friends at Clairvoy, our friends at 4i, our friends at AutoSuite, really trying to see, how can we put more dollars into the areas that are selling more cars that we can attribute back to more cars, right? And so this is July in a market here from one of our partners. And you can see, in the AOR, we've got 38% of market share in this area. We've got 41% of market share in this area. So I'll go to this one that's got a few more. And you can actually start seeing all right, well, what are the other folks? What are they selling into our market? Some Camry, Corolla, RAV4, Grand Highlander. And so over the course of the few months that followed after this, a lot of content was built around those models in this market, in this area. This is an SEO and GEO only client of ours. And so you can kind of fast forward and look and say, great. Now, all of a sudden, we've got, going from, 38% market share to 65% market share in that area, or to 60% up from 40%. When you start prioritizing your content efforts in these areas, then that's where you're going to, create success, more visibility, more cracks to the bat for, especially great partners like these guys who are so good at selling. Then this is some of the recommendations that we'd maybe even make beyond that for, whoever their paid search provider is, or what we would do if we were doing that, or, for OTT and direct mail partners is down here in this area where we know there's a competitor right there ready to go after them. Let's heavy up. Let's pay a little more for clicks. Let's maybe, be comfortable with a higher cost per lead than we might originally think. Because when we start focusing our efforts in these areas that are true battlegrounds, this is where, now it's great to see, great positioning, lots of green, lots of market share in these areas. How do we continue to expand and make this part of our conversation that much more? And again, I want everyone to know that we're getting used to a lot of this. I mean, we are 4 months into this. We are learning. I mean, it's like a fire hose coming out with information and what we can learn. And it is awesome because of what we can do. And in this case, here's another one of our partners. You're looking at their AOR, and you can start seeing, certain areas where you got some reds, in the background. I think at this point, they've got about 50% market share. And they jumped up to about 80 in 4 months, right? So it's inside their AOR. And so you can see, some yellows, some reds up here, some reds and yellows down here. And so with a concerted effort, you can fast forward and you can see surrounding areas where there's green all over in those surrounding areas where people have to go and drive to. And then you can start seeing even some green down here. One of the things that's a little hard to see, but what's neat about when you start injecting in the paid search data on top of this is we can start putting, the map specifically around the areas that we want to be targeting to prioritize our spend and, go higher click-through rate, get a greater share of the clicks, maybe go up a little bit on our cost per click. But what we're trying to do is get a greater share of clicks in these areas that we're trying to defend, right? So prioritize our content plan around these kind of areas. Again, the visualization of the market is huge. And I think what we've learned more than anything is that oftentimes we're trying to go into markets that we are not selling any cars, and we spend a ton of money as an industry, I'm saying. And then there's been a lot of folks that are spending tens or hundreds of thousands in areas that they are selling 0 cars. When you start overlaying your budgets and you start overlaying your strategy on top of these visuals, and that becomes the cornerstone of the conversation, it's huge what you can do to start really seeing those growth numbers increase. Again, we feel very strongly like we are at the very beginning. I'm going to stop sharing so I can go to the next screen. The very beginning of our understanding of how to even make this better by bringing in partners across the industry to help us really prioritize all the spend. And, it's been great because we've got a few partners a few of our dealer partners who we're working on in conjunction with other partners that do other vendor partners who do other things. And then that really helps make a lift. So all this information visualized in this way, great opportunity to put that focus again on our dealer partners' language and not our language. Instead of speaking digital, we're speaking dealer. And, I love wearing that VP of marketing hat, as you mentioned before, because this is where probably the most fun we have is when we start getting into the strategy like this.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, you packed so much into that. I think, I think one of the things that I just really believe in is, the ability to use marketing dollars as wisely as possible, right? Even back to our background with Leaf being held to a $200 cost per car sold, right? Like that's crazy if you really think about it and compare that to NADA averages. But if you look at how to gain that ground with SEO and then how to tailor in your paid search spend instead of just blanketing a market, right? Like really using it to go after specific makes and models that can do it. Dave, if somebody's watching and they're just like, okay, I'm going to share some of this with my current agency, like awesome, right? Like, should they be doing PMAX in these markets? Is there a certain strategy or two that you would recommend when dialing it up like that we should be aware of?
Yeah, I mean, VLAs are on the paid search side, VLAs are by far, the lowest cost tied to sales type of campaign you can do. Make model campaigns do really well.
Awesome.
Really, I mean, if you're looking at what campaigns are, if you have an attribution partner, then that might help. We also see in terms of sales volume, those regional campaigns, Toyota dealer near me, Ford, dealer near me, they have high attribution when it comes to volume. They cost more, but they also cost more coming also, with the revenue that comes from service, because, 80% of those campaigns are service. But if you're not doing those, and you're not showing up for those, if someone's looking for a Ford in your market or a Honda in your market, I mean, Ford dealer near me or Ford dealer in Dallas or Ford dealer in DC, wherever, I mean, that they're going to look for that. So you'll pay a little bit more for those, but if you're trying to take market share from others, those are the things you look at, where the volume's coming from, and again, let the data dictate the direction. So, I mean, really, when you leverage the impression share data, when you leverage them and put that on top of a market, you say, I'm showing up only 30% of the time in these zip codes. Let's increase that budget a little bit. Or if you are just killing it and you've got 100% market share, let's decrease that budget. Start letting the data dictate the direction.
I love it, man. And so with that, we're going to talk a couple things, more changes to just Google in general. One, we'll talk about AI mode, and then let's go into some of the more recent things and maybe our stance on those.
Love it. Yeah. Well, a lot of us saw, and if you didn't, Google Marketing Live, Google unveiled AI mode, really as I think a direct counter to the user experience that ChatGPT and Perplexity and these other LLMs, create. So you can just go and do these searches. You'll get an AI response. It's the, Gemini engine, just like the AI overviews, the similar stuff there. You can see, for some of these commercial queries that no one right now is really doing in AI mode, but you can kind of see that it's, what's showing up is this, kind of a composite of what shows up in the organic sections below, right? So usually if you're showing up well organically, you're going to show up in these things. But people on the next slide are asking, okay, well, we're doing SEO, we're doing GEO, we're showing up, organically in these areas. But what if someone's clicking on an ad? What's going on with the ads, in the AI, AI mode or the ads that come, right below AI overviews for some of those informational searches. Good news is you're showing up for them. As long as you're doing performance max campaigns, I mean, you're able to show up for them. Unfortunately, Google in its current environment, really the past several years, is not as transparent as they used to be. And so a lot of what and how and where and how to allocate budget around the most efficient things is not there. There's a little bit of trust the machine that comes with this, but you're showing up in these searches, and so we at Reunion we negative out certain things that you're going to show up in, with like your brand name and those kind of things, so that we're not overspending on things that you already own. But there's a lack of transparency there. The other question, so again, just to recap, if you want to show up in the AI mode searches, Performance Max, and then we got you covered on that part. But then the next piece, people are asking a lot about this AI Max for search campaigns. So, just because it says AI, we're not talking about AI mode. This is basically, a repackaging of going broad and going broad match it and just saying, okay, go ahead and spend my money, and it will. There's an endless amount of money you can spend on this. We have done some experimentation just because we like to know what's going on in these areas, and the results are abysmal. You lose a lot of control. This is basically like if you want to set it and forget it, go AI Max for search and then let it happen. But this is not. It's not the way that you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. You need greater sophistication. You want to focus and prioritize and allocating your budget on the campaigns that are driving the most sales. There are some, not all campaigns are created equal, right? So, overlay them on top of your battleground areas, overlay them on top of your backyard to play defense and keep people out, and then prioritize appropriately. But this is one that we are currently saying, not for you. Again, we will turn these on for anybody who wants them, but our strong recommendation is not a good investment compared to where else we could be spending money.
I think that's helpful for people to hear, though, right? Because there's so much noise about AI. It's hard not to just want to jump on every wagon that's out there, right? But continually learning, which is what we've got to do when it comes to the LLMs themselves with advertisement. Is that right?
That's right. Exactly. And we're talking about ads in Google and ads in Google AI mode. And people are saying, what about ads in these LLMs? Perplexity, they're trying a few things here and there. They paused their efforts, because you can see in the article in the bottom right, they're reassessing ambitions. We know it's coming. ChatGPT is, looking at an ad platform. In fact, if there's any growth paid marketing platform engineers out there in the audience, and you're looking for a job, they are actively looking for someone to go in there. So we know that's coming. Chad and I we're talking a lot with some folks recently. We did a 4-hour workshop with Mike Bukowski, who's coming on right after this slide, actually, to talk about the future for us. People were asking about, what's happening here. And really, when you see the changing experience on ChatGPT right now, where it used to just answer a question and it just stopped. Now, they're always asking a follow-up question like, hey, would you like me to do this? Would you like, they're really. And so our prediction, and we do lean into predictions a lot here, right? When Chad talked about our EOS model and our vision for the future, it's the reason why we were first to market with, our reporting. We beat SEM Rush, actually, right? And big thanks to Mike Bukowski on being able to get that information and data out, even ahead of a giant company like SEM Rush, being first to market is something we're very proud of. We need to make predictions to do that. And our prediction is that all of this, user experience prompting for more questions and more questions, that's probably where the ad environment is going to go. At least that's one of our hypotheses. And so they're priming people to click on these, ask a few car questions. Would you like to see some inventory? So, we are, have Google alerts set up, to tell us if we see, as soon as this hits the fan, we're going to be all over it. And so we're really excited for this to happen. We don't know the exact timetable, but we are watching this particular job. It's still, as of yesterday, they are still hiring for this position. So we're watching that closely. Google might even end up taking that person, right? Because they do that. They like to buy up the staff from OpenAI and Perplexity.
Absolutely. And Dave, before I let you go, we got a great question here, and I'm going to try and answer it while also getting your opinion. Our good friend Jim Taylor, who's certainly been an awesome client and partner of ours, he's asking, how much do the AI LLMs work together or they stand alone? And my synopsis of that is they're all pretty standalone, with ChatGPT being different than Perplexity, being different than Claude, being different than Gemini. However, in my experience or my understanding is that they've got to all pull their information from somewhere, which is how it all kind of ties back to Google, back to that slide that Matt shared earlier. Would you agree with how I answered that, or would you elaborate more before I bring Mike on?
Yeah, I mean, they're all looking at the internet, right, to pull their information. So they're all looking at the same websites. I mean, all of our data works in different ways. I mean, we're not going to see Google Business Profile do much to power ChatGPT, for instance, and we'll see different different websites that are going to more powerfully power the sentiment behind that. On Google AI mode, a lot of that sentiment comes straight from your GBP. So it actually adds a whole lot of complexity and variety. And so, that's why we've actually separated out those two, our key lift and really more Google focused, SEO focused. Click on the links and the people who are shopping, reporting differently than our GEO reporting, because it is a different experience. One, like Chad said before, helping shoppers better shop and have a great UX, and then others is feeding the machine. And
absolutely,
well said. But it's all the same internet.
Yep, absolutely. Well said. And keep those questions coming, folks. I've tried to jump on them all as we've gotten them. So keep them coming, especially as I bring up the man who typically likes to live behind the camera, but we're pulling him out more and more these days, and I'm here for it. Mike, you've done a ton this year to keep us ahead, and the product team is working their behinds off. Well, it's just beginning, right, man? Tell us a little bit about where you see Endeavor and GEO taking stage in these next few months and as we continue on.
Yeah, definitely, Chad. So I think something that we are seeing right now is that as we're progressing down this path of LLMs really providing responses, there are different types of responses that we have to begin tracking, specifically related to reputation, right? So if I take a prompt like, how do customers describe car pricing transparency at your dealership? We are finding a wealth of responses that have really critical insight into how you are perceived across your website, as well as your review data. So with the launch of Endeavor 2.0, we are going to focus specifically on your sentiment, right? So what is your sentiment generally across LLMs? Is it better on ChatGPT than it is on Google AI mode? What's the difference? Is it better in your buying theme, or is it better in your service theme? After looking at probably about 90,000 responses, I'm just going to clarify something for you. Service, trade-in, and finance are where we're seeing the most negative themes across your dealerships, right? But what are we going to do about it, right? What our goal is here is leveraging what we're calling response intelligence, is to take this data, understand it, build an action plan about it, and present that action plan to you, as well as your customers, through the development of different content plans, as well as you able to use data that you're able to leverage within your ORM. The goal here is that because LLMs are leveraging review data on your website so aggressively, we want to ensure that you guys are perceived in the best way possible continuously throughout their journey in their buying process.
That's awesome, man. And keep it going here with talking a little bit about how the competition ties in.
So I absolutely love this one. I am literally chomping at the bit to get to it. I love the competitive part of this business. It's awesome. And so with Endeavor 3.0, our next goal is to understand your in-brand competitors and your off-brand competitors, right? We really want to get into it and understand specifically what specifically the LLMs, and when I say people, I mean review data, are saying about the differences between you and your in-brand competitors and your off-brand competitors. Once again, leveraging response intelligence to understand negative, positive, and neutral themes, and integrate those themes directly into your content, as well as providing you insight that you can work on your ORMs with. This part is going to be incredibly valuable in beating out your competition, and that's why I'm so excited about it.
And I love it. And Mike, just to make sure, as far as I understand, all these great clients who are on with us today, the folks that have been these early adopters and are really trusting it as guide us, this is just going to come with the program. That's the plan from Art's perspective? Is that right?
Yes, that is our goal currently, is to make sure that you guys are getting access to this data as quickly and easily as possible.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's just going to be so helpful. And again, that's a huge shout out to those of you who have been these early adopters with us, been in these beta tests, are starting Endeavor. A lot of you will be starting on 12/1. Just know that as most people are still catching up to where your dealerships are, and we know that more people are going to be on with this at this time next year, we're hoping to be on versions 2 and 3 by that point, right? And I think that's who we want to be as partners, as your partner in digital marketing, a little bit of one step ahead, right? That's where we want to be, in making sure that you guys are always a little bit further where the competition is catching up to. And with all of that, right, we're taking in more data than we ever have in our entire life. So Mike, how do we start to tie this together, and what's the goal here with Altitude Intelligence? It sounds awesome, at least.
Yeah, the name is pretty sweet. The work that goes into it is pretty comprehensive, but But our real goal here with Altitude Intelligence is to begin to build a layer, right? This layer is going to be able to provide you more often insights about how you're performing, right? We always talk about this, right? It's data, information, and contextualized insights. Reunion Marketing is focused on getting into contextualized insights in 2026 for you guys. The goal of that really is to enable you to have as much visibility over your performance and ask those critical questions, right? We wouldn't be here without you. And I sure as heck wouldn't have a job without you. So your insights are fundamentally important to enabling our success. And our goal with Altitude Intelligence, and one component of that is the Activation Hub, which is the email component. How are we delivering relevant insights to you continuously, monthly, about how things are going so that you guys can have better conversations with your internal teams as well as us on how to make you better?
I love it. I think this is just going to be awesome. We know for a fact how busy everyone is that's on this call. And thank you again for taking the time to be with us and talk through these things today. But we also know how nice it would be to just be able to instantly validate what we're doing, how things are working, and really how we've been able to do this. And I think Altitude Intelligence takes us there. Mike, I'll just hold you on the screen as we look to close things out, man. And so, again, we're coming right up on our hour mark. So I'll welcome Dave and Matt back in here, and we'll finish out just with a couple of things. But I tell you, what we've learned so much this year is that we've got to continue to dominate SEO. We've got to continue to own the blue links. Now we've got to own position 0. Now we've got to be looking towards this whole idea of GEO. But wow, we just can't let our foot off the gas. If we've learned one thing about the industry, is that we are going to continue and see different hurdles and changes. We saw just before we got on this call that Ford's reached a partnership with Amazon. There's something that's going to happen that will make sure that we pivot and need to pivot again next year and continue to grow together. And so with that, I just want to thank everybody for taking some time today. I want to bring these guys back on. So if they have any last closing conversations, points that they want to make, otherwise we will let everybody rock and roll here today.
I think I want to reinforce maybe the point that we want feedback. We want more feedback. I mean, this product is that much better because of all the feedback. So first off, thank you for giving it. So many of you have given us a lot of ideas on how to make this better. A lot of the new to market folks are giving a ton of feedback on the data and how we make it better. And so Mike talked about that roadmap that comes directly from you guys. And, we learn a lot. We're out there researching, work from the dealership perspective. How do we make it better? That's something we want to continue to lean in on. So please keep sharing.
Absolutely. All right, guys, this has been a heck of a time. We've gone through a lot in just under an hour here. Thank you all for taking the time to join in with us today. As Dave said, give us feedback. Please feel free to reach out to myself, Dave, Matt, Mike, or any of us over here at Reunion. We're here with you guys as you look to close out the year strong. And thank you so much for your partnership. We appreciate you all.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.